This is Dan Rogers, your host on We the People Town Square, coming to you from the center of the universe, the high plains of Texas, near the headwaters of the Prairie Dog Town fork of the Red River. Today is February the 1st, 2024, and today we are here with Lee Findley, who's running for the Court of Criminal Appeals Place 8. Lee, welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
Let's tell the primary voters out there why you're running for this position.
Well, I like to break it down really into three things: experience, efficiency, and election integrity. When it comes to experience, I've been a criminal defense attorney for more than 20 years. I've handled thousands of criminal cases. I've been in trial in hundreds of criminal cases. Now, my opponent, the incumbent, even though she is on the bench, as an attorney, she's never handled a criminal case, never tried a criminal case, never filed a criminal appeal. So I have vastly more experience in the actual criminal law arena. In terms of efficiency, our Court of Criminal Appeals is taking 2 to 3 years sometimes to bring down an opinion. We had a recent opinion that was brought down on a relatively simple interpretation of the forgery law related to how those should be charged in terms of A, misdemeanor, B, misdemeanor, all the way up to first-degree felony. But it took the Court of Criminal Appeals 1 month short of 3 years to bring down that opinion. Now, you might think, what does that have to do with the average voter? It has a lot, because prosecutors statewide stopped charging many forgery cases because they weren't sure of the interpretation of the new amendment to the statute, which means that counterfeiting of $20 bills, check kiting, forged checks increased rampantly, and that has a direct and immediate impact on the economy. So our Court of Criminal Appeals needs to be more efficient and bring down decisions quicker and simpler. And finally, the third point is election integrity. Our elections are absolutely critical, and election integrity is the most important issue in this election. Ronald Reagan said, if you don't control your government will control you. I absolutely believe that that is every bit as true today as it is when Reagan first said it. If you don't have election integrity, if your citizens don't have confidence in the results of your election, that undermines everything else.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's my big issue up here. We've been working on it for a long time. My concern is that under the current system, there's no ballot.
That is absolutely a legitimate concern.
We're not having elections.
Absolutely a legitimate concern. But as it relates to my race, it goes even beyond that. The Court of Criminal Appeals in the Stevens decision, which I might add was brought down 2 days after the deadline to file to run against the 3 Court of Criminal Appeals justices who were up for election that year. But Stevens' opinion removed the ability of the Texas Attorney General to prosecute violations of the Texas election laws. Now, at first blush, that doesn't sound like such a significant issue, but it's huge, and here's why. If you have a district attorney who's ideologically aligned with extremist political groups or individuals who are engaged in active election fraud, like we saw in Harris County, they have no fear of prosecution. George Soros and hard left groups put more than $1 million into the Harris County district attorney race and won it for the Democratic candidate. We know of active election fraud going on in Harris County. There was an election worker for the Sheila Jackson Lee campaign who was caught red-handed submitting ballots, absentee ballots, from people who were deceased and who had moved out of the county. But those examples of election fraud are not being prosecuted. And when you lose the integrity of your elections, you literally lose the very foundational elements of our republic. The people of Texas have a choice, and that is who is going to decide who their leaders are going to be, who's going to choose their judges, their governor, their attorney general. Is it going to be the citizens through the power of their vote, one person, one vote? Or is it going to be ideologically extreme groups like the George Soros-funded PACs who engage in widespread election fraud and completely undermine the power of the individual citizen's vote.
Yeah, to me, your vote is the foundation of our republic.
Couldn't agree more.
It's your voice. It's the people's voice. And the way it's constructed now, it's being muffled.
Not just muffled, eliminated.
Yeah. Well, so what can the Court of Criminal Appeals do to reverse that? Can they reverse that, or is that going to have to be done at the legislature?
Well, now I'm under the judicial canons of ethics and have to be careful what I say and how much of an opinion I express, because if I directly comment on specific cases that could come before the Court of Criminal Appeals, I might then be forced to recuse myself. So dealing with election fraud, dealing with election integrity and the Stevens case, I can only go so far into it. But look, anytime you see a court come out with an 80-page decision or a 100-page decision with all manner of convoluted reasoning, you should be suspicious. It doesn't take 80 pages to say, look, those words mean exactly what they say. Look at the Roe v. Wade decision. Look at Overfels. Those decisions where the court wants to deviate from well-accepted and understood law in order to change fundamental parts of our society to be more aligned with their particular ideological bent. Those opinions are the most dangerous. Now, we've seen activist judges all across the nation, particularly in California and several other liberal states. But in Texas, we've been fortunate to have much less of it. And to the extent that we've seen it, it's been at the lower district courts in certain Democratic counties. But we're seeing the real world implication of activist judges in Harris County, in other liberal counties, and those decisions are changing the very landscape of this state. I'm frequently fond of saying I live in Collin County, which is one of the large conservative counties in Texas. And I'm frequently fond of saying, as Collin County goes, Texas goes, and as Texas goes, the nation goes. And what I mean by that really generally is more towards the presidential election. You cannot elect a Republican presidential candidate without carrying Texas. And you're not going to carry Texas if you can't carry the large conservative counties like Collin County. So as Collin County goes, Texas goes. As Texas goes, the nation goes. But now we're seeing one of the two top courts in Texas, the Court of Criminal Appeals, coming down with what really can only be considered judicial activism and eliminating the ability of the Texas Attorney General to enforce the Texas election laws. That undermines the fundamental conservative Republican values and beliefs that you and I share.
So you think the best way to stop some of this is to inform the voters of the role of the Court of Criminal Appeals and to get competent conservatives that will enforce the law as it is written. And that's how you think that the voters can have an impact.
Exactly. Now, look, truthfully, the Court of Criminal Appeals is really sort of on the outside of the awareness of your average primary voter. They're certainly paying attention to their state representatives, their federal representatives, the president. But the Court of Criminal Appeals is really outside the range of the things they're normally concerned with.
Yeah, because nobody has any way to really inform them of what they do.
Right. And they believe, mistakenly, particularly this year, that the decisions of the Court of Criminal Appeals really don't impact them. This particular decision hugely impacts them. It undermines the integrity of every election in Texas. It jeopardizes the nation. Look at the debacle of the last presidential election. You couldn't ask for a more pointed demonstration of how critically important election integrity is.
Yeah, and that's because a lot of states just didn't follow their own laws.
Absolutely.
And nobody held them accountable.
Absolutely. But the Court of Criminal Appeals has rendered a decision that was really unexpected Do you think the House members who passed that election law back in 1985 thought to themselves, well, this violates the Constitution, but I'll do it anyway? Do you think the Senate members who approved it and voted for it thought, well, we don't have to worry about the Constitution? Do you think the governor who signed it thought it violated the Constitution? What about the courts, including the Court of Criminal Appeals in a mandamus action, who've looked at it since and said, nope, that's fine? And all of a sudden, after that many years, we're just going to say, whoops, we had it wrong all the way along. No, the Attorney General can't enforce the laws of this state.
Seems to me that's kind of his primary function.
Well, the Stevens opinion is a really sort of convoluted, the basis that the Court of Criminal Appeals used to remove the Texas Attorney General's authority to enforce violations of the election law was the separation of powers. And one of the few correct things in that decision from my personal perspective is that the separation of powers under the Texas Constitution is stronger than the separation of powers under the federal Constitution. But in no way does it rise to the level where the people, the citizens of Texas, through their duly elected representatives, are unable to convey to the Attorney General certain limited concurrent jurisdiction abilities. And that's what they did. And that's what the Court of Criminal Appeals struck down.
Well, that's fascinating. Well, let's, before we wrap it up, tell the voters a little bit about your background and why they should choose you over your opponent.
All right. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. I'm a Marine Corps veteran with more than 20 years of criminal law experience. I'm a lifetime conservative Republican. I'm strongly pro-life. I'm strongly of the mind that the Second Amendment protects an individual right. And I am vocally anti-big government. Those aren't just campaign sound bites. I've spent my professional career in the courts protecting and defending the citizens of Texas against government overreach, protecting families who choose to homeschool their children against government interference, protecting lawful firearm owners against government attempts to restrict or eliminate their right, their fundamental right to keep and bear arms. When I was in the Marine Corps, I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. That oath never expires. I protected individual rights and the rule of law as a Marine, and as a judge on the Court of Criminal Appeals, I will protect the individual rights of the citizens of the state of Texas and the rule of law.
Well, very good. Do you have a website where people can learn more about you?
I do, yes, sir. It's Findley for Judge, Finley for Judge.
FindleyforJudge.com.
Yes, sir.
All right. Lee, we sure appreciate you coming by today, and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate you having me.